Episode 82, Equity and Independence. Introducing Ayvianna Snow on the BTS Creative Academy Podcast, UNCUT. With me, your host, Martin Colton.
Are you getting many listeners?
10,000 on Spotify.
Really?
That's over 3 months, the first 3 months. But that was so much more than I'd ever hoped or expected for. That was.
I wouldn't have said yes in such a cavalier fashion if I'd known there were so many listeners.
So about 2 or 3 inches away.
Am I sitting in the right place?
Yeah,
okay.
you think that's
Do I need
about
to put these
perfect.
on?
You don't have to wear them. No, in the
Okay.
beginning I was wearing them, but they're not really that necessary.
Sure, okay.
So as long as
you know what you're doing.
as long as you're comfortable about as long as you don't stray too far away from the microphone.
So I try and stay.
So about there, if you
stay
get comfy,
here.
and then I'll position it wherever you
Where
are.
I land.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
That's it. And I play with it in the edit as well. So they're very good, these microphones.
The acoustics in here is good.
Well,
anyway,
yeah.
isn't it?
Unless we get a helicopter come over, we're pretty much good. So here we are. Thank
Are we
you.
filming now? Is this?
We're filming. We're on.
I always,
This is
always check.
Have we started? Yes, we did about 5 minutes ago.
Oh my goodness, dear me! That's 5 minutes of unfiltered Ayvianna.
Unfiltered Ayvianna. So Ayvianna, thank you for joining me on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's very kind of you.
Yes. No, it's very kind of you to be here. I'm really happy. I'm really excited to hear from you as an actor, as a union. Are you a union rep? Is that what we call it?
Yeah,
Union?
I mean, equity's weird in that they use the word DEP, whereas every other union in the world says rep.
Okay.
And I don't know why, but I work with equity. I think that's the quickest way of putting it.
Yes. And am I right in thinking your position is co-chair of a
I'm the
region?
co-chair of London North branch, which covers everybody who lives in London north of the Thames, which is over 5,000 members. So it's a very big region,
vast,
and it's
vast.
a lot of people. So it's a busy time.
Yes, yeah, I can imagine.
Keeps me going.
Yeah, and and there's been a lot going on recently, which we're bound to get into this evening. But how are you in general at the moment? What's going on in Ayvianna's world at the moment?
Oh, I've had quite a good month considering it was January. January is always such a boring month, which drags on. But
it's difficult for everyone, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I hate January, but it was quite good this year. We had. I was in a film called Burnt Flowers, which I began filming in October of 2021.
That was quite a while ago.
I know, 3 years of my life. But it finally came out, and I attended the premiere at Horror on Sea, which is in Southend, I think 2 weeks ago. So that was lovely and felt like the culmination of 3 years of work.
Yeah. And is this an independent movie?
Yes.
Because
yes,
you're very popular, I'm going to say, within the independent
that's
world.
one word for it.
Yeah, you're working quite consistently with independent film.
Yeah, so I've carved a niche, I suppose, for myself in the independent sector. So all of my movies are independent productions. So Horror on Sea was lovely. The film was really warmly received, which is always nice. The kind of people that go to that festival tend to be people that really love the genre, and they're there for love. So it's a very warm atmosphere in the room. The film was awesome. Michael did an amazing job of directing and also playing quite a lead role in the film as well. Then Romford Horror Festival is coming up this month in February, and I have, I think, 3 films screening at that festival.
Yes, yeah.
So I'm going to go to that and say hello to everyone. So yeah, I'm bouncing around horror festivals around Essex.
The horror genre is big in independent film, isn't it?
It is. Yeah.
Is there a reason for that?
I think it's probably because it's one of the easier genres to sell. So
it's a business, the movie business.
Yeah, unfortunately, as much
business.
as I do love the genre, of course, and artistically, it's fulfilling. But when you work in indie film, it is always, how can we sell this? And we haven't got the kind of the resources or the backing of a big studio to do a sort of huge $1 million advertising campaign. So unfortunately, you do end up kind of thinking, okay, well, what can I sell given the resources I have? And horror is amazing in that we have dedicated fans who just kind of just love horror and will watch a film even if it hasn't got big name sort of A-list actors in it. And can be sort of, I guess, forgiving if the film is maybe a bit rough around the edges in terms of the production values, which so yeah, I think a lot of indie filmmakers tend to start with horror to kind of get their foot in the door, and then maybe further down the line, sort of after 2 or 3 horrors, they maybe move on and try a different genre. But a lot of people start with horror as their way in.
So at the moment, you're predominantly working in that genre. And I looked on IMDb and I saw you had you've got quite a lot of films yet to come out, haven't you? There's quite a lot in that post-production stage.
Yeah, it's 10 or 11 or something like that. Yeah, I can't keep entirely on top of it either. So.
And I think within that independent film world, films do the time scale of things getting done can be difficult, can't they? It can be a challenge
because we're working in the independent sector, so. A lot of the time you find, for instance, that the post-production period takes longer than it would on a studio film because, like, I've had directors say to me that, I'm getting my friend to do it. He works at Goldcrest, but he can only do it on his weekends or on his days off or whatever. So, and then
every other Monday.
If a bigger project with more money comes in, he has to dump our film and work on the proper film, as it were, and then when he's got another free weekend, he goes back and he does another 2 days on my film. So the process of sometimes it can be in post for like a year and a half, and you think, goodness me, how long can this take? But it's because it's being done in sort of incrementally,
in bits. And then there's the whole part of the marketing and the business side of it that happens once it's finished. Once it's a finished product, then they might be trying to sell it to a studio or distribution.
Yeah, I mean, I think. Most indies kind of, I think nowadays are going down the kind of self-distribution road because you get such little return on trying to go through a label that it's almost no longer worth doing.
So that's happening on you can jump straight in onto Amazon, can't you? You can put your film yourself on Amazon, although I think the returns, I think you get something like 1 pence per played hour for your film. So even if, say, I've bought a film and I've paid, I don't know, for the sake of argument, £10 to buy it on Amazon, the person who created that film is getting 1 penny per hour. So if I turn it off after the first hour, that's 1 penny. Or if I watch 2 hours, 2 pennies. So and you wonder, where is the other £9.98 going? Into whose pocket? So that's a huge unfairness. It's quite a scary world that we're living in. That the money can just be drained away from the creators like that, the people that have put their heart and soul into these projects. And then the distribution network like Amazon or Netflix or whatever it is just stripping them dry, aren't they? Yeah. And that giving 1 penny?
I think it's 1 pence per streamed hour, I believe.
Oh, that's harsh. It's almost like just saying a token, isn't it?
It's worse than harsh, though. It's sort of, it's cultural vandalism, and it's
almost piracy.
It is, and people can't live. The creator of that film can't live or even get close to living on that. And even if they got £2 per streamed hour, and Amazon could keep the other £8, you'd think, well, that's something. But it's 2 pence is so ridiculous.
It's quite scary. It's the potential that it could do to the industry as well.
Well, I think
because independent filmmakers and independent artists like yourself, that's where you're coming up into the bigger things. So what happens when you stop that trail of people coming up?
Well, yes, absolutely. I mean, it's something I've been fighting about at Equity for a long time. When I first joined Equity, their definition of a low-budget film was a film with a budget of less than £3 million. And I argued that this was out of date because nowadays, 3 million might have been all right as a definition in the 1970s or something when there were only big studios making films. But nowadays, everyone has a camera in their pocket. You know, it's become ubiquitous that everyone carries a camera about with them, which didn't used to be the case. So it's because camera equipment is now so easy to get your hands on, anyone can make a film. I've been on sets where they were making the whole thing for £30,000, £50,000. And I said the definition needs to change to move with the times, because if there's no support for people trying to make films on 30 grand, those people will never climb up to get 3 million and then 10 million and then 50 million or whatever.
It's the foundations of the industry, isn't it?
Yeah, and increasingly there's no kind of way for people to get in. You know, there's no avenue. And you don't need equity when you have 10 million. You need equity when you have 30,000. That's when you actually need the support. It's when you're at the bottom.
Yeah. So I want to get into a bit. I've got a feeling I understand this, but how you got into being an actor that's also part of equity, like running equity and looking after other actors and trying to look after the industry, it sounds like. So where did this kind of start for you, this performing life? Have you always been a performer?
I wanted to act when I was a child. I don't entirely know why or what gave me that idea. It was an odd idea because my family have nothing to do with the arts. My father's an engineer, my sister's a doctor. So, and I do think when I said I wanted to act, people did look at me with a sort of, you know,
what now?
Yeah, as if I'd announced a desire to, I don't know, join the Moscow State Circus. Or it's just something really out of.
Yeah.
And I was very academic at school and quite sort of bookish and wordy. And I think people have an idea in their head that an actor is a sort of extrovert and the sort of class clown. And I was sort of the very opposite of that.
Yes, yeah.
So people just sort of, everyone, when I was young and said I wanted to act, looked at me with a...
It doesn't fit your type.
Yeah, it doesn't fit.
Or their perception, at least.
Yeah, their perception of what an actor, what kind of person is an actor. But I don't know why I thought I could do it, or why I...
Did it start within school? Was you performing at school?
Yeah, I mean, I used to go to the sort of drama club on a Wednesday evening at the sort of the Millennium Forum Theatre, as it was called. But again, I don't think anyone took me very seriously. It was just sort of children hanging out. And I think sometimes parents put children in just as an excuse to sort of give themselves 2 hours to go and do something else. Yeah. Go and do some drama for 2 hours, you know. And they're not. I don't think anyone was expecting any of those children to become professional. It was just sort of something to do on a Wednesday. And I shocked everybody around me when I applied for drama school, and shocked everyone and myself when I got in. It's amazing. I still don't quite know how I managed it or what possessed me.
Which drama school did you go to?
I went to the Arden, which is in Manchester. I wasn't very polished at the time when I was doing the auditions, and I admit that I didn't really know what I was doing. But I didn't have anyone to guide me because, as I said, nobody around me knew anything at all about the subject. And the level of the advice that I was given, when I look back, I mean, I remember I had a teacher at school, a careers teacher, and we were all meant to be going in and being given advice on how to, these sort of, what do you want to do now that you've turned 16? Yes. What do you want to do?
Go off and be a doctor or a lawyer.
And I said I thought I might like to go to drama school, and how would I go about it? And first of all, I had written in my statement something about different theatre practitioners that I had studied. And she said, "What is a theatre practitioner?" She thought I had made the term up.
Yes.
That's how little the knowledge was that she actually thought I had. She had not encountered the term theatre practitioner, so not off to a good start. And then I asked for advice, because I'd never done a drama school audition. And I thought, well, what should I... How do I even go about doing this? And the advice I was given was, why don't you wear a really nice, bright coloured top? You know, so that you look a bit kind of fun and bubbly, something like that. And that was the advice I was given by my teacher, to wear a brightly coloured top.
To be an extrovert, basically, is what she was saying.
But it's not... It's such a lack of any kind of understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Of what it was that you wanted to do, and what
absolutely no idea. And
Mm-hmm.
I look back, and I was at quite a good school, you know, and that was the best advice. I went to the best school in Northern Ireland,
Right.
like the top ranked in terms
Mm-hmm.
of academic results, and that was the advice from the top school: wear a brightly coloured top. And you think, goodness me.
So, what kind of an impact did that have on you?
The
negative,
it made me
clue.
realize that I was going to have to figure this out myself, because the people around me couldn't do it and didn't know and couldn't help.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized I was very much going to have to, if I was going to do this, I was going to have to do it utterly myself. And yeah, so then I used to get on the boat. There's a boat that goes from Belfast into Liverpool docks.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to go on that charming overnight ferry. Try that sometime if you want to laugh. And come over to this country and do auditions.
And where did that take you from there when you kind of left drama school? Did you then move over to the UK?
Yes, I moved. I moved to England when I was 17, 18.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been here that long. And after drama school, I went to London, because I thought that's where
hopes and dreams
are,
are made. Yeah,
I guess.
Yeah. Well, they are there, aren't they? They are. That's the majority from my perspective, that I've seen.
I think it is still, unfortunately, the
Mm-hmm.
truth that most casting opportunities are in London. So I came here and rented a horrible room in a flat in Brentford, and just started literally knocking on doors and walking up and down the streets in Soho, auditioning for anything and anyone that would have me, sitting for hours, sending off tapes through Mandy, and just...
How do you say persistent through that? Because it's hard.
It is hard. I feel this is the only path.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like if the only path in front of you is like piled high with 6 foot of snow, you think, well, start shoveling.
What's the alternative?
Well, exactly. You can't stay here, so shovel.
Yeah. But there's something to be said about that, though, isn't there? With how far you're coming along on your journey. How many years are you into this pursuit of acting now? Since then?
God, I mean, it depends how far back you want to place the starting line, because I actually moved school when I was 12 or 13 or so, to go to a school that would offer drama classes. A lot of schools don't even offer drama at all as a subject that you can study. So if you, I mean, it's around 15, 16, 17 years, depending on how far back you put the start date. If you start at 13 or 15 or whatever, you know. Yeah. But it's a long time. You don't know whether to laugh or cry, do you?
No, and it is a tough thing if you want to be an actor. Like we were talking before this podcast about a bit about my journey. Me, for 20 years, I was hitting my head against the brick wall, asking to be part of other people's projects. You're constantly putting yourself in front of people, asking to be judged and hopefully welcomed, and 9 times out of 10 you're not. Yeah. And that's the truth of it. So you've got to really, really want it, haven't you? Yeah. And so what do you think it is that makes you really, really want it?
I don't see any other thing for me. I don't see any other path for my life.
And that's very genuine. That's who you are. The authentic Ayvianna is a performer, is an actor. That is essentially, you know, similar.
I hope so.
Yeah.
It's kind of debatable, but I hope so.
And that can, like I was saying again, going back to myself, that can change at points in your life. For me, for 20 years, that was what I wanted to pursue, and I had the same thing that you're saying, that this is who I am, this is what I'm going to do. But then I had a pause in the moment and stopped, and then went, well, no, actually, maybe that was for something different.
Yeah.
You know. But at this moment for you, this is who you are. So joining Equity, let's ask a bit about Equity. So joining Equity what is Equity?
Equity,
for those that don't know.
Of course, Equity is the trade union which represents performers, I think the technical term is professionals in the performing arts, because we don't just represent actors, although I think people think of us as the actors union, but in actual fact we represent theatre directors, singers, dancers, circus performers, people that eat fire, people that walk on stilts, drag queens, audiobook people that do audio
essentially
stuff.
Entertainers. All forms of entertainers.
Clowns, stage managers.
Right. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So models.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, it's a really broad
hosts.
church.
Can I be part of the union?
You would. Yeah, I think so. I think
Yeah.
you would be in for your acting work anyway.
Yes,
But yeah, and many of our members do have multiple strands, as you can imagine. That's the way the world is going. But yes, so we're a very broad church of kind of everyone in the performing world.
And so what made you want to, as an actor, be part of Equity? Because you don't have to be part of Equity, do you? Or do you?
No, you don't. You're correct. Although I would very much strongly suggest that you should be a part of Equity. So it used to be a closed shop, meaning that you could not work without being a member of your union. And it used to be much harder to get an Equity card. You used to have to work out in the regions for, I think, 50 weeks before you could then sort of earn the right to come into town and perform in London. Nowadays, all of that is gone. As soon as you get, I think £500 is the criteria. So if you've earned £500 from any kind of performance work, you can join Equity. If you're on an Equity contract, you can join Equity. So it's sort of instant joining as a full member. So Margaret Thatcher got rid of the closed shop unions, and so nowadays...
Do you think that was a good thing?
No. So nowadays, yeah, you can work as an actor without being a member of your union, but I think all that it does is drive down prices and working conditions, which get worse and worse and worse, and it's a race to the bottom. And I hear people... Like I was at a meeting a few months ago of a group of very nice women who work in documentary film, and they were discussing problems in their workplaces. They're doing overtime for which they're not being paid, and some person was running a campaign. It was a good idea to clock all the unpaid hours that you've worked in a week and to sort of collectively do it so that they can keep track of how much money they all should be earning, and that they could use this information to then sort of lobby their bosses and all this. And I thought, that's called a union. And if you all just joined your bloody union and we had 100% membership, all of these problems would disappear overnight.
Because I guess the idea of the union is to protect and look after each other.
Yeah, and it means that, so if you see on Mandy an acting job advertised at £50, the union would say, no, that's not enough. People can't live on it. But because we have people not in the union that will take it because they're desperate, it drives down the price for everybody. And
this is a very difficult industry for that, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And employers take advantage of desperation. There are too many actors, that's true. There are too many actors, very few jobs available. But the answer, I think, is not to undercut each other and sort of, I'll do it for 50, I'll do it for 25, I'll do it for a ham sandwich. You know, where does it end? We end up all working for nothing, and then there is no industry because no one's making money.
Yeah. So how it is difficult in the independent world, isn't it?
Yes.
For independent films to pay actors sometimes.
Yeah.
And so I do feel I've done a lot of acting jobs for free.
Yeah.
Because the production they don't have the money. An independent film doesn't necessarily have the money at the front end. They have it at the back end.
Yeah. So
they can't necessarily promise to pay you. How do you feel about productions like that?
Well, when I started doing this campaigning work at Equity, as I was speaking about earlier on, about this definition of 3 million, which I felt was
completely out of touch.
Yeah. What I tried to do was, so we have a special agreement called the Fringe Theatre Agreement, which allows, so we have our proper agreements for like West End theatres and the National Theatre, where you have to pay actors so much every week. And then we have a special Fringe Theatre Agreement, which acknowledges that Fringe theatres cannot afford the same rates that the National are paying. And I understand that. Of course they can't. The National is subsidised. They're making millions. They're getting donations and, you know. Yeah. And so you can go on the Fringe Theatre Agreement, which I think stipulates, I think you have to be paid national minimum wage. And then there's also a sort of open book policy. So that it's sort of transparent bookkeeping, in that if you ask to see how much you earned that week, if you're working at, I don't know, Southwark Playhouse or whatever, they have to show you. And so they have that for the theatre, and I lobbied that we should have a similar one for truly low budget film productions, because I think holding, you know, if you're trying to make a movie and you've got 10,000 quid to do it, it is unfair to hold you to the same standards as someone with 3 million. I agree with that. That's it's not feasible. You haven't got the same resources. But I wanted to try and bridge this gap between Equity and the low budget film world, because I have a lot of friends in low budget film, and I have a lot of friends at Equity, and a lot of people at Equity would simply say, well, if you can't pay actors, you shouldn't be doing it. And I have said to people at Equity that response is not good enough. You know, it's not
realistic.
Well, we have a responsibility to work with indie filmmakers, not to sort of pretend they don't exist and go la la la, but, you know, to try and welcome them into the union, and as you said, you know, they are the next generation of British talent, and I said we do have to try to welcome these people and build bridges. So after a lot of back and forth, and it took over a year of development, I did get them to institute this new agreement called Shorts and Festival Circuit Films, which is a very grand title. Nice. But yeah, so it basically it means that you do have to pay national minimum wage, and there's a clause in it which says that if your film then goes on to get distribution or gets picked up or something, you then can sort of retrospectively go back and pay full Equity rates. Right. So
that's fair. That sounds fair.
Yeah, well, it was the best I could do in terms of bridging those two very different worlds. But I do believe in trying to be reasonable, and I do want indie productions to do well. I work in indie productions, and I don't want to stop anyone from making their movie, but I want to try and bring a bit of equity into it. And it's not just money either. It's also things like its working conditions. So health and safety on set, which I think often gets forgotten about in indie productions. You know, sometimes I've been in situations I felt were not safe in terms of, I remember doing a film, and one of the actors they built this thing very hastily out of like old bits of wood they found around the set and sent one of the male actors up to hang off it sort of backwards. And I said, I think he should have a harness or something. And they said, oh, no, it's fine. And they sent this runner who was about 16 up to hold onto his knees from the other side. And I thought, that's not... So things like that I think we maybe could improve upon.
Yeah, protecting people.
Yeah, so having insurance, having, I don't know, stunt people so that you're not having to do fights sort of yourself without any kind of person to direct you.
Or guidelines to protect people.
Yeah.
Would that be helpful?
There are guidelines within the... So the Festival Circuit Agreement has the agreement itself, and then it has a little accompanying booklet with kind of best practice guidelines for how to go about your film in a safe manner for those who perhaps have not made a film before. So that's been my attempt at bridging the gap.
Yeah, and it sounds like trying to make a difference to the industry as well.
Well, in a positive, I try to be useful in some small way.
Where did that start? Where did you go from being, I want to be an actor, to I want to look after the industry and look after the other actors and artists?
It happens so gradually that you don't quite notice.
Right,
so
okay.
I joined Equity at first, just like everybody else, because it's just a thing you do as an actor. I thought, I'll join Equity. And then I went to a meeting of the now defunct West and Southwest London branch, because I think they had a speaker from the National Theatre, and I just wanted to meet the lady from the National Theatre. It was the casting director, Wendy Spon, who's now retired, which shows how old I am. But and then I slowly got dragged into it. You know, someone says, "Oh, come to a meeting and listen," and then you find yourself suddenly. If you're
suddenly helping out with one small task,
which balloons, and then and I think if you're I'm quite competent and quite sort of organised, and you find lists suddenly thrust into your hands, and you go, "Oh, am I running? Oh, okay, right." But yes, I think I've been involved since maybe 2016, which is about 8 years. So
Do you find it's helped you as an artist, as an actor?
Yeah, I do. It's given me a greater understanding of how things work, because it's all very well just sort of knowing how to act in and of itself, but then you also have to know, how does this industry actually work? I hear all the news, I hear everything, sometimes before everyone else hears it. I've met some really interesting people. You know, everybody comes in the door of Equity, and I hear of it. You know, I've learned from listening to all the clever people that come.
So, when you say you've heard some things before they happen, we've had a big major event happen recently, didn't we, with the actor strike, mainly in America, because we didn't have a strike here, did we? We were in. What was the technical terminology of what happened?
SAG-AFTRA were on strike, you're correct, in America. We are not legally allowed to go on a sort of sympathy strike in the UK because our government has some of the strictest trade union laws in the whole of Europe. And they're also pushing through this legislation at the moment, minimum service levels. So, for instance, if your union votes legally, you know, to go on strike, this legislation will mean that you still have to have a minimum service even on a strike day, which, you know, to me is crazy. So Equity was not allowed to go on a solidarity strike with the US, even though I think they probably would have liked to.
I think they would definitely have liked
in
circumstances that were being faced in the industry.
Yeah, we did hold several rallies in sort of in solidarity. We had a few in Leicester Square in London, and then I think there was. I think
I saw you on the front page of a newspaper holding a bat. You was right on the front line, holding a picket up. I'm sure I saw you there.
Probably knowing me. So we did that kind of thing, but that's all we're allowed to do in the UK.
And what kind of an impact do you think that had?
I think it's good to show the bosses that we're serious and we're not going to be taken for fools. and were organised, and it was also really good to raise public awareness of what it's like in the industry, because I think the average Joe on the street just thinks, oh, actors are all really rich, and there were some videos that some of the American actors made where they showed how much they got in residuals,
the
and it would be like
pennies
50 pence or whatever.
Yeah,
and I had my friends that are not actors were shocked because they didn't know that. So it's been good awareness raising with the public.
But there's lots of challenges and there's things that we've got to overcome. But is there anything that you're looking at forward and thinking we're on the right track with that?
I would say that the arts has always overcome things in the past. If you look back, the theatres were closed during Shakespeare's lifetime. They had a plague and all the theatres were closed. We overcame Puritanism. We overcame... it used to be that all plays had to be pre-approved by the Master of Revels, who wouldn't allow anything on stage that was critical of the king. And we've always had these issues, but we've always fought and we've always won. And people will always tell stories as long as we're alive. There'll be someone sitting around the campfire telling a story. So I have no doubt we will prevail.
We will overcome. And what about you? Looking forward for you as an artist, as an actor, what is there coming for you? It's hard to say, isn't it, when we're constantly auditioning and constantly seeking those parts.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of just keep slogging along. I have a few films out later this year. I've done a film called Derelict by Jonathan Zaurin, who I think is an amazing talent. And one of the most stunning cinematographers I've ever worked with. He has a great visual eye, and he's able to make things look... He manages to make it look as if they had a sort of £1 million budget, when in reality it was just me and him in a kitchen in Wales with sort of one man holding a light. So he's just got that ability to do that. So I'm very excited to see that. I'm appearing in Bogeyville, playing a vampire opposite Sean Cronin, which was also good fun. I did my own stunts in that movie. I genuinely, not through choice, but yeah, I think they couldn't afford a stunt person, so it was down to me. Yeah, and then I'm always kind of...
You keep shoveling that snow, like you said, and keep moving forward. I feel like we've covered a lot of ground here. I feel like we've got loads of stuff on the equity and on your life. It's been really nice having you here, having this conversation with you.
Thank you for speaking to me. I appreciate your time.
No, I appreciate it. No, I throw that straight back at you. This has been about you today, and I'd just like to leave it on a note of ask you if you've got any advice for actors that aren't part of equity. Is there anything that you'd like to say to them as to why they should be part of equity?
I think it's more morally correct. I think it is morally right to join, and I will give you an example. So a few years ago, I was on set of yet another horror film, and the food for lunch arrived, and it was very bad food, and we were all complaining. Nobody could eat it. It was horrible. What is this? Yeah. And I said, right, well, let's complain to the management or the people in charge, and let's say...
Because it's fair enough that you have to eat, isn't
yeah,
it?
well, we have to eat. And it's a long shoot day, and everyone said, oh, no, I don't want to say anything. No, I'll get in trouble. And I said, right. So I stood up on my own and went to the first AD and said, look, nobody can eat this food. It's not good enough. You've got to provide sandwiches or something. And while I was doing all this and risking my neck, everyone else was sitting at the table pretending they couldn't hear or see me doing a kind of...
Because everyone is concerned about if they raise their voice, cause a fuss, that they're not going to be employed again.
Yeah, but let me explain. So eventually I won the argument, and the next day sandwiches were provided, and all of those people that wouldn't support me ate my sandwiches that I had won, but they didn't help me to win the sandwiches. And the thing is, because I was the only one who went out on a limb to do it, I was in danger of, as you said, of losing my job or being labelled a troublemaker. But my point is, if everyone around the table, if every cast member had stood up with me and said, we will not continue until we get sandwiches, there would have been no danger, because they can't fire all of us. That's the thing. If we all stood up collectively, we would win the sandwiches and nobody would be in any fear of losing their job. So I think if you still refuse to join, then you're taking my sandwiches and you're not even bothering to help. So you're taking the winnings without contributing to the winning of it, which I find morally repugnant. But
that sounds fair.
Yeah, so I think be part of the solution, not part of the problem.
Wonderful. What a lovely note to end it on. Be part of the solution, not the problem.
Vaguely threatening. But yeah.
You should say that looking straight down the camera. Well, thank you once again for joining me.
Thank you very much for having me.
This has been a pleasure. Really do appreciate it. Thank you. And if anyone is listening or watching, thank you. We appreciate you as well.
Yes, very much so. Thank you.
And if you'd like to find out more about the BTS Creative Academy, you can just search. What is it you search?
I don't know. It's your.
It's really easy. It's
just
BTS Creative Academy.
Okay.
Yeah, nothing complicated. I don't know.
Do you not know what your own company is to search?
No, it's just really simple.
Okay.
It's on everything. And if you'd like to find out, if not find out more, because we've already told you that bit. But if you'd like to hear future conversations and don't miss out on any conversations, you just need to hit the like and subscribe button, and that will remind you when new conversations are coming. Wonderful. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.